If you, it's all right. If you haven't already, please silence your cell phones. City of Anamosa City Council Agenda Regular Session, Monday, July 8th, 2024, 6 p.m., Anamosa Library and Learning Center. 1.0 roll call.
Here.
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 If you're waiting for me, I'm here. I can't hear you.
Here.
Here.
We have 5 council members present in chamber and 1 is with us remotely. We'll try to work together to get all the votes casted and conversations had. 2.0 Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Three point zero consent agenda, review and approve. There's 3 items. I will read them off. Council can make a motion that includes consent, which will bring all the items up for a vote, or a motion can be made on any of the items. Item A, minutes from June 24th, 2024, regular session. Item B, current bills. Item C, Noise Street closure permit application.
Move to approve consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Rich, second by Kay. Council discussion on any of the agenda items.
I have a question on this curb stop repair by Derek Young.
Yes, sir.
So we can't do any of this stuff in-house?
We do not do the curb stop repairs because those are private, and we're not licensed plumbers.
Then why are we paying?
Because we paid for it originally and then it goes to the property owner.
So we can fix water mains, but we can't do curb stops.
We're not
And we have
licensed.
all the equipment.
We're not licensed plumbers to do that. And so then we've had the discussion before, where we've been hiring this out ever since I've been here. And that way there's no discrepancy on what the bill is. If, the first conversation we had before was we were concerned there'd be discrepancies on what we're charging for equipment rates and manpower rates and stuff like that, where if we just hire it out to a private contractor, it's over and done.
So we're not paying it. Essentially, we're paying it, but
We're just paying the bill and then it's being assessed back to the property. So
We can get it through property taxes.
yes. So
I just knew that the curb stops are the responsibility of the homeowner.
Right.
I was told.
yes. And so we send out the letters, we give them the time, and then when they don't do it, then we hire somebody to do it. So then it's over and done with. And then we can continue on doing our other things and we don't have to try to go fix curb stops also. So
Should we bid this? How do we do it?
we've just went out to a few different ones. We've had a couple different ones doing them. Cause you can't necessarily bid it because they're all different. The only thing you can get is your base wages and your base price. You know, it's going to cost so many hours for personnel, machine, stuff like that.
So how many bids did you take, Steve?
We talked to a couple different people in town.
Am I right in assuming the only time the city does it is when the property owner has received the notice and has not followed through and done it him or herself?
Correct. After, I believe it's 60 days after they get the letter, that's when the utility billing clerk tells us, you know, they've received their time, they have not fixed their curb stop, so then we hire somebody to go in and do it. So.
My second question's on the blower repair for Delancey Electric.
That was wiring up the new blower. Anything else?
Any other discussion on any of the three items? Benny, would you please conduct a roll vote?
Yes.
Dan Smith,
Yes.
Yes,
Tukin,
I have to abstain.
Weiner,
Yes.
Crump,
Yes.
Consent motion carries with 5 favorable votes and 1 abstain. Item 4, public hearings, none. Item 5, proclamations, none. Item 6, postponed items. 6.1, review and approve service agreement from ECI cog for the next phase of the Downtown Revitalization Community Development Block Grant, CDBG project, Derek Lumsden.
Good evening, everyone. Derek Lumsden, Jones County Economic Development. I heard there was some question about these last time. I'm sorry I wasn't able to be here that night. These are what EasyCog traditionally does. This is the same thing you would have approved for phases 1 and 2 from EasyCog. They don't put an end date in it because if the state, for whatever reason, moves back the deadlines or whatever, you'd have to completely resubmit for a new contract. So they put until the funds are distributed or announced by the state as to where they go. That way we have them working with us the entire time. And that way we don't have to wait for council meetings to roll around or call special meetings or whatnot. But these are the way they've worked in every other project with EasyCog since I've been here. Jeremiah and I looked back and that's how we found the rest of them as well.
So just a question, if we apply and do not get the round of funding.
Correct.
This contract stays in place and for maybe the next go round and the next go round, and
they would probably we'd probably update the dates to determine so what would happen. This is set up for if the state pushes back dates. If we apply and we don't get it, then we'd regroup and figure out why we didn't get it, and then there'd be a whole new contract next year. This is only for current date I think is November 22nd. If the state suddenly decides, hey, we're going to push this back to December 15th, EasyCog's work doesn't stop November 22nd. So it allows us to work with them through this application season. And then if next year, for whatever reason, we don't get it or we choose not to apply or whatever, then if we did it in the future, EasyCog would bring back another contract for that time, that application season for the CDBG windows.
okay, so would you need to notify us to terminate this agreement?
It would just be over. If we didn't get it, that's their distribution of funds that we got 0 and the contract would be over.
Todd, as the attorney, is that the way you read this?
I was confused on it as well. It seems to me that, I guess if we've done so in the past and we haven't had an issue, that's one thing, but I don't know if it seemed open-ended in that it could go on indefinitely until we get. I guess I don't understand why they don't specify that this is for the grant period of January 1 of 2024 through December 31 of 2020.
We ran into that last year. The grant season spilled over into 2024 or 2023. So when the state randomly changes the dates, we'd still have to wait for a council meeting to come back, amend the contract. They leave it open-ended as to when the state makes that determination of where funds go. And when that is released, that ends the contract. That's why it's written the way it is, because as it says in the contract, if you don't get it or if you choose not to apply, you pay EasyCog for the time invested. If we get the grant, then they automatically assume the administration fee, which we'd signed a different contract for, as we've done in the past, that they take directly from the grant. So trying to make it easier on cities so you don't have to meet as often. We have a lot of cities that only meet once a month in the state of Iowa, which makes it probably a little more paramount for them than it might for the city of Anamosa. But we could try to add it in. I'm not for sure what dates to put in because I don't know what the state might decide.
Well, I don't know if there necessarily needs to be a date as much as like Todd said, funding period. So if you go the current funding period.
Well, the current funding period is technically done November 22nd.
Right, but if that's what you say instead, because the way I'm reading this is, okay, current funding period is November 22nd. We don't get the funds, but this contract stays in place then for the next year. Because it doesn't say, as far as I can read or see, that it stays this current period.
It does. I mean, what is the exact word? I think it says dissolution of fund, something along those lines. Distribution of funds or determination of funding or something like that. I'm sorry, I didn't bring
The
my with me.
effective dates says, and the service agreement shall remain in effect until funding disposition.
Which is when the state makes their announcement. And I can't decide.
So that's your terminology, is that portion of it is funding disposition is the current funding period. I take it to mean if the funds are funded to us, at that point, that's when it's terminated.
Well, and that's not how the state or EasyCog looks at it because of the way HUD writes languages for CDBG programs.
So we almost need to have a little cheat sheet of terms.
Well, it's never come up before. We've done it before, so I guess I never thought to have a cheat sheet, but because the other two were done the exact same way.
Yeah,
So
right.
I guess just for future purposes, it would be helpful if, even if the language said something to the effect that
through state release of funds or something like that.
well, or to the disposition of funds unless otherwise extended by the program. Something that tells us that, like the scenario you're talking about, that if it is currently set for November 22nd, they reach out to you and say, well, we're going to wait till December 15th. That at least gives us something that would trigger us to either have it up on a meeting agenda to make sure, hey, did the funds get distributed, or was there an extension?
Okay.
I'm not being critical of
No.
your interpretation. I'm just saying that for future reference, it might be helpful for that agreement to add the language in, or the terminology like Rich is talking about, that tells us, well, disposition could be extended by
Mitigating factors.
Right.
Yeah.
We could also do it like we do with the RFQ, which we're going to be discussing in a little bit as well, that it's 1 year from the date of signature. You could do that well because it wouldn't run into the following season, application season either. So, I mean, we could try to do that. I can see what EasyCog wants to do. They usually tend to make whatever HUD language is there, they put HUD language in it, just because we have to follow all the HUD guidelines.
Sure.
So I'm not for sure how we can change it, but I can see what's possible. The council would feel better about that.
I guess nothing else, if we could get from EasyCog even some sort of letter that says the intention is that if we don't extend the deadline and you don't get the funds, that's what we mean by disposition. And I'm not trying to be, I don't practice contract law. It's been 30 years since I studied contract, 35 years since I studied contract. But it just seems that there's just an open end there. I'm not trying to be difficult. I would hope that we get the funds because we've gotten them in the past, and you all know what you're doing, filing the appropriate request. I just think that it could be a little bit more, there could be a little bit more information to us that we know that if November 22nd passes and it either hasn't been extended for whatever reason, and we didn't get the money, that we know that this particular agreement is over and we start from scratch with the new.
The other reason, like I said, is partly done that way is if it is extended, they wouldn't start with a new, because you'd have to pay them for the work done under this agreement, where right now we don't pay them until we know we don't get the funds. So another agreement would technically cost the city more money. So I mean, I'm happy to ask if that would make the council feel better. I'm just trying to make sure that one, we get the project done, next phase started, but without incurring costs that I hope aren't necessary.
Well, and I appreciate that, but this just looks open-ended to me, the way it reads, that, what I do is you got to have some definitive dates and timeframes and so forth. And this just looks like it's open-ended. And I think from your side, if I was you, I'd want some kind of saying until the state funding disposition or something, so that from your side, you're protected also, because we could say that the way I'm reading this contract could go on for another 3 or 4 years until funding could occur, even though you're telling me that it's this funding period.
Right. Well, and I think is there a termination clause in that one as well?
Yeah, and I was gonna bring that up as well. I think that came up at our last meeting. Again, I'm with Todd, not to overcomplicate things, but it does say that it may be terminated by either the city or the service provider by submitting written notice of termination to the other party no less than 7 days before the end date of this service agreement. But the service agreement doesn't specify an end date. So that was one of the things that came
Yep.
up.
So, I mean, to me, I guess you give 7 days, since it's open-ended in that mind, you give 7 days, and since there's no end date, 7 days from when you send the letter would be the end date.
Right, but because it says before the end date, you do state that in the contract. That's why I'm thinking there should be an end date or something.
What date would you
more-
like to see, I guess? I mean,
Well-
we've never done it that way before, so I'm not sure what you'd like to see.
Well, you're suggesting if you go 1 year from contract date, would that not suffice? Because you said that would get you within that funding cycle.
It should, as long as like another COVID something doesn't happen and they kick stuff 6 to 8 months down the road.
Well, I guess I would maybe cover it. To cover sort of an exigent circumstance. Hopefully we don't have another COVID issue, but even if it was, let's say, January 1st of 2024 to January 31st of 2025, that gives you 13 months. So that if there had to be an extension, I mean, I think once we get beyond November 22nd this year.
Well, and that's the due date. I should be clear that the disposition of funds, we don't have a date for.
I guess what I'm saying, though, if we use that as a date that we know that's a target date of some sort.
Yep.
To get something done. If they don't, I think that, I guess I would be comfortable if they would agree that we do like a 13-month time frame. So that, because how long after November 22nd do they take to then distribute?
It's been anywhere from a couple of weeks to 6 months. I can't tell you.
So really, maybe instead of saying the funding disposition, it should say the funding acknowledgement or something that, no, because the funds aren't actually going to be dispersed until could be what, May of 2025,
Well,
even though they're, in November of 2024 that you're getting it. Is that correct?
no, not entirely. So the way it works is we submit our application, so it's due November 22nd or whatever the date is. And
Okay.
then the state has so much time to review, go through a process, they go through a comment period, they go through all their stuff. And depending on the year, that can vary. So like last time we went through it, it was due early November. We didn't find out until mid to late January. But the time before that, I think we submitted in July and we found out in August. So it's hard for me to say, depending on what the state's doing at that point in time, what else comes up, what other grant programs they have open that are similar. But what would happen is between the time we submit and the time they make those announcements, as you recall, you've had Tom and other people from EasyCog here doing public hearings and whatnot, all included under this auspice of this grant application. So if you stop it at a certain date, like when we hit this timeline, then we'd still have to have them come and do public hearings, which are not now covered under this grant because there's a definite timeline. And so they put disposition of funds because that's when the state says, here's where these funds are going. And so that would wipe EasyCog's hands of it because like, okay, Anamosa got it or didn't get it. Now we know the disposition of funds has been granted. If we didn't get them, we owe them for the work done. If we did get it, they automatically roll into their contract for administration, which they pulled directly from the grant, as we've done in the last two. And that can take a couple of months as well by the time we go through contracts and stuff. So it's hard for me to give you a little more clarity on that because we have to follow HUD rules, we have to follow state rules, and then EasyCog is bound by those as well, but they have contractual duties as well. And that's why the first two projects went like they did, approving something like this. We went through the application phase. Then once we got the money, we went through the second contract phase for them to be the grant administrator. I guess so maybe you can help me, Rich. Why was this issue the first couple of times? I guess I'm missing something, I guess.
Well, I honestly probably did not notice it to the other times,
Okay.
but I noticed it this time.
Okay.
It stood out to me this time more than the other time.
I was just trying to figure out if there was something I
Yeah.
missed that
No.
was a problem.
No, just to me, it stood out a little bit more this time for some odd reason in reading it.
Okay.
Especially when I saw it 7 days before the end date, and I'm going, "Where's the end date?"
Right.
So I don't know. From what you described, maybe instead of going the 13 months, we go 18 months type thing. If that gives us a year and a half to do that process and so forth, all the way up to potential receiving funds.
The one thing EasyCog won't write the grant twice for the same contract. So they'll initiate a 7-day window, I'm sure, and say, hey, we didn't get it. Here's our bill. This contract's over. And if you want to go after it again, we'll write it for you. Here's the contract again. Because they won't write the same. We'll have to go through all the processing. We'll have to go out for an RFQ for an architect again. We'll have to go to public hearings again. We'll have to do all those steps again, which means that EasyCog's contract will come up again. Generally, I mean, they're about a year, but I hate to give a deadline because just like last time we went through it, the state kicked the can down the road 2 months. And so we would have been beyond the window.
Can you give me an idea? And I don't expect an exact number, but can you give me an idea of what EasyCog, the work that they do that we would have to pay for, whether we get the grant, well, that's gonna get paid for either through the grant or by us not getting, we have to pay them. Can you give me an idea about what that cost is approximately?
I can try.
Sure.
So you have to do a slum and blight survey. They have to do public hearings. They have to do some Section 3 HUD clearance work and stuff. My guess is it would take about 30 to 50 hours, depending on how many buildings we had. And most of those type of people at any of the cogs around the state, their average is about $75 an hour. So whatever that might be, it's not an extravagant amount. But the nice thing is the last couple of times we haven't had to pay for it because we got the grant. And then
Sure.
that part is considered included, and they don't take it out on the back end because they have to track their hours when we take it out of the grant. So essentially they're doing it with the understanding that they would get the administration, kind of like we do with our RFQs for the architects on this project as well. They do the front side with the understanding that they'll be the architect for the project.
Well, and I see it says not to exceed 6,000.
Yep. So whatever, like I said, the math may not be perfect, but
Right, so.
Right. And success rate, 90%, 95%?
well, I mean, we're at 100.
100%?
So
Okay.
I'm at 100%. I can't speak for everybody else or other projects they do, but I'm at 100%. Tom, since I've been working with him since I've gotten to this side of the state, I think he's either 4 for 4 or 5 for 5. So, I mean, we have a good system that we have set up. The way we write, Tom and I work together on the application. Bethany from Martin Gardner the last couple times has helped where she's needed to make sure the architectural side is sound. I mean, aside from the state wanting to spread the money out differently geographically, I can't imagine why we wouldn't be a strong applicant again unless we just don't have enough buildings. And that's something we won't know until we move into that phase of the project.
So if all the parties were to, in a sense, keep their thumb on the pulse, nothing should get overlooked in as far as timelines and.
It hasn't yet. So I would hope not. I mean, Tom's done it before, I've done it before, and assuming that the RFQ gets passed the way it's presented, I mean, Bethany would be the architect again. So 3 people that have done it work together. This will be our 3rd time. So we have a pretty good understanding of how that process works. And the state and the federal government made all their changes last time. So we shouldn't have any surprises along the way this time.
Is there any more discussion? Can this be approved even with your red flag concerns?
Well, I think with the 7-day, I would like to see some better dates in there, but for this time frame, maybe going forward, you might want to think about that. But I would move to approve it.
Second.
A motion by Rich, second by Todd. Council discussion?
I would just so that we don't miss some time frames, maybe for that last November or first of December council meeting, we should at least have a report as to where we stand with completion of it and if we've heard anything.
Yep.
just So that we have, so we don't lose track of it.
Absolutely.
Anything else, council? Any public comment on this agenda item? Penny, please?
Dan Smith,
Yes.
Kay Smith,
Yes.
Tukin,
Yes.
Weimer,
Yes.
Crump,
Yes.
Yes.
Motion to approve carried.
Thank
you.
Thanks, Derek. 7.0, council action item. 7.1, resolution 2024-38, setting the date for the status of funded activities for the downtown revitalization project of the city of Anamosa, Iowa.
I'll make a motion to set the date for status of funding activities for July 22nd.
Second.
Motion by Rich, second by Dan. Council discussion? Public comment? Benny?
Kay Smith,
Yes.
Tukin,
Yes.
Weimer,
Yes.
Crump,
Yes.
Crump,
Yes.
Dan.
Yes.
Motion to approve carried. 7.2, review and approve selecting Martin Gardner Architecture as the design architectural firm for phase 3 of the CDBG downtown facade revitalization project.
Move to approve.
Is there anything you wanted to add, Derek?
No, that's good.
All right, so,
Second.
okay, I was gonna say, we do have a motion by Kay, second by Teresa. Council discussion? Public comment? Benny?
Weimer,
Yes.
Crump,
Yes.
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 Kay Smith,
Yes.
Tukin,
Thanks.
Motion to approve, carry. Thanks, Derek. 7.3, resolution 2024-39, approving the preliminary plat of the Cuba First Edition subdivision in Anamosa, Iowa.
This did go through planning and zoning, this past meeting. I believe it was on the first of this month, whatever the first Monday of the month was. It was recommended for approval. There was, some discussion on it. I also believe that, Melissa from HR Green is online if there's any questions. We have a representative here from Fallen Hall as well that may be able to help us if there's additional questions.
Have we really took a really deep dive into the stormwater situation out there? Because I know we've been burnt in the past.
Define deep dive.
Just ensure that it's big enough in size, adequate to handle whatever flows we can get. And where are we going with it?
Yeah, I don't know if Hall and Hall may be the best toys to answer that. Otherwise, Melissa may have some insight into that. The question had come up in the past. this does come with a slight zoning classification change, which does change the structures and how they would fit in here, which of course would have an effect on the stormwater or water runoff as well. So
And I guess my next question would be the sewer main out front, is it big enough to handle 22 more homes? And is that gonna gravity feed into our main? What is the difference between 4R2 and 5R1 as far as zoning? What is that designation?
I don't have the ordinance with me. It changes some of the setbacks primarily. Look that up if I can find it quickly here. That's the primary difference, is the setbacks.
Will it also, because it changes our setbacks, what about just utility easements in general as far as getting to and from? I'm assuming it's making our setbacks probably closer to the street as opposed to further away. But we're gonna have utilities other than sewer and water going up through there. There gonna be any difficulty moving forward by changing the zoning 4R2 to 5R1 as far as accessing? We're gonna have enough room to get to things. Utilities that have to get in.
Well, looking at the dimension standards, it looks like 5R1 and 4R2, the front setback is 25 feet. The side, one of them is 6, one is 8. And if it's a corner lot, one's 10 and one's 15. If that helps any. And then the 5R1, the lot size, the minimum is 5,000 square feet. 4R2 is minimum of 8,000 square feet, but that's a multifamily residence, so could be a 0 lot line type of situation.
Does the zoning change apply to everything, or just is it specific to the Cuba edition?
It is specific to the Cuba edition. Yeah, specific to the
Thank you.
Cuba.
This is Melissa with HR Green. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Good evening, Melissa.
Good evening. Do you have any specific questions for me? I guess it's real quick as far as stormwater and sewer sizing. We've just reviewed the preliminary plat at this point. We have not received a stormwater report or anything like that. So we would expect to review that information when we receive the site plan.
Well, as Jeremiah has stated, planning and zoning reviewed the plat. I guess also my understanding is they are in favor of it. They approved it to whatever means or measures they can approve and then send it to council for fund. Dan, Todd, Rich are bringing up, I think, very good questions. Some of the same I have noted here. guess I just don't know, do the questions get directed to, are the city's engineering, firm, or do they get directed to Hall and Hall, which is representing the developer? If you could come forward and state your name and the company you're with.
Yeah, Brian Vogel with Hall and Hall Engineers. I'm the engineer on the project. Excuse me. So the sanitary is more than, the sanitary is sized adequately. It's 8-inch, 22 homes. There's no problem. And it'll be gravity fed. The storm sewer will all be designed in detail with the detailed plans at this point. There hasn't been detailed design done yet, but it'll be designed to handle all the storm.
As I viewed the plat, and I'm definitely working outside any area of expertise I have, I did notice that the side setbacks to structures is 6 foot, which is, Rich says is is acceptable to the new classification of the 5R, 5-1, whatever it was. I have experienced, as far as being on council, another development area that was wider, that setback was greater than the 6 foot. We had significant drainage concerns or issues in the neighborhood. So now we're taking and reducing it by 2 feet. We're adding 22 homes. Now granted, they're all not in line, but they do wrap around through a cul-de-sac. I don't know if I stood at the center of Old Dubuque Road and looked to Highway 151, what that elevation is. Certainly think it'd be greater than 6 feet. So you're stacking homes as you go into the cul-de-sac, one higher than the other. All that roof drainage, downspout drainage, at some point is going to make its way to the lowest point. We would hope the street. Or does it start to pool against the house that's next to it?
No, so the existing topography out there, the high points at where the cul-de-sac is shown now, there's a high point and everything goes to the east and west. And the street's gonna be on a high point. So all the front yards and half of the house will come to the front to the street, and the backyards go to the back, and there'll be swales that take it.
Where are the downspouts pointing?
The front ones will go to the front, and the rear ones go to the
They
rear.
won't, they will not go to the side.
No,
That's what you'll assure me.
yep. The way this is set up, it's set up really nice for this cul-de-sac.
There is no, I didn't see any drainage easement listed on side yards. And flats I've looked at in the past, they show it.
Yeah, there's no off-site drainage coming through this site. Like I said, we're at the top of the hill. Some sites you have a whole bunch of off-site drainage, so you get a lot of stormwater, flowage going through your subdivision. This one, we're at the very top, so it's very minimal drainage.
And, maybe these are questions the city's planning and zoning team raised and got answered. I just don't have that information in front of me, so I'm not questioning them, but, you're here,
Yeah,
I'm
no,
questioning
that's
that.
Good question.
Council has, the final approval. So this is being reclassified just to get a narrower setback.
I think smaller lots.
So in a sense, one's driving the other.
Sure.
Okay. 26-foot wide street width.
Yep.
That seems narrow to me.
It's a SUDA standard street width.
Is that the minimum?
Yeah.
So that's as good as we can be, is just whatever the minimum is?
It's pretty standard. I mean, I guess that's up to you guys. If you're not comfortable with 26, it's standard street width.
Well, I know Breckenridge is one of the narrower streets that I navigate on a regular basis. Well, granted, the city can set some requirements in there as far as parking. My concern is that it's too narrow with parking, street parking to get, emergency vehicles through.
Yeah, typically it's a 26-foot wide street. You don't have parking on one side.
Is that part of the, what would be the plan? You guys do anything suggesting?
In other communities, when there's a 26 or 27-foot wide street, there'll be parking on one side and the plans would suggest what side of the street allows parking, which one doesn't. And there'd be a signage plan as a part of the plans.
Cause I travel some of the same roads and there are occasions where there are cars parked on both sides, and I would agree, you try to send a fire truck up to the highest point in our neighborhood. And there's cars on either side of that roadway, there's gonna be a lot of dented fenders and a lot of, mirrors going on. So if there's something that we can see in final plat, I understand this is preliminary, so there will be an opportunity for us to look at the final plat.
Yeah, the final plat will have the detailed final plans with all the design information as well. There will be a signed plan included with that, showing where the no parking on what side of the street.
Has anybody taken consideration the snow removal and where we're gonna go with the snow?
Shane?
Shane?
Did you come up, Shane?
Shane Brown, Street Superintendent. No, I have not figured out where we're gonna go with snow. Probably the ditches, I'm guessing, bring it out, throw it in. I sat down with Jeremiah a little bit on that and said that we needed, to answer the question back with the storm. The ditches are really shallow there, between Cuba and Wilson. My suggestion was to put storm drain all the way down through there and eliminate the ditches. That way we don't have that flooding of the ditch up into people's yards.
Yeah, the cul-de-sac won't have any ditches. It'll be an urban section.
Yeah, but when you get out to Dubuque Street, there's a ditch.
Yeah.
And I think we should culvert it. Otherwise, we're gonna have ponds. At least we can force it down into one area.
And is the final plan for the street itself to have curb and gutter, or is it?
The cul-de-sac will have curb and gutter.
All the way from Old Dubuque Road, both sides.
There's no improvements planned for Dubuque, Old Dubuque Road, but the cul-de-sac would on both sides. So you could plow behind the curb. There's that distance between the sidewalk and the curb.
And then as I was reviewing the preliminary plat, again, not my area, but I didn't see streetlights.
There will be streetlights. It'll be part of the detailed plans.
I thought I had seen 2 fire hydrants.
Yep.
Is that adequate?
Mm-hmm.
Again, is that the minimum requirement?
It's more than minimum just because we have one at the end of the cul-de-sac.
Okay. Well, questions I have. Council?
One other question. Just saying, if we get a 3-inch rain, what's that gonna do to the neighbors? On both sides?
It wouldn't do any more than what it's doing today, because we're gonna take half that to the street, which will go into storm sewer, then it'll just be the backyard. Do the drainage now by taking the front to the end of the street and going into the storm sewer. There'll be less surface runoff to the neighbor.
Neighbor to the north?
It'll flow to the south once it gets to Old Dubuque Road.
Yeah, but that's where, doesn't it drop down
Yeah, well,
on the neighbor to the north?
it's all flowing to the south, I guess.
Yeah, to the neighbor to the north would be lower.
Yeah. That's a private drive that goes through there to the White residence. I think that's a lower point than the backyard of this proposed development.
And Doles are on the other side, so that's real low in there.
Yeah, we're tying into existing back there. It'll flow along that rear property line on the north, and it gets to the ditch and flow south. And then on the south side of the road, it'll flow along that property line to the ditch and flow south. All flows to the west and then to the south.
These are just things to consider.
That's a lot of roof water to carry.
Storm sewer beside.
Big thing is, I think trying to balance getting new affordable housing in without having somebody whose existing house gets water in their basement.
Yeah, for
Because
sure.
we've had that happen, unfortunately, in parts of town.
Yeah, that's something we don't want either.
Just all leery about that.
Also, any other questions? I know
Uh,
I dug into this prior to any motion, but
And I'm just gonna, I assume, looking at this, that two of these lots are actually gonna be tying into Wilson Court's
Yeah, the
sewer
south-
system and water system.
Yeah, that south lot, there's an existing home that's gonna stay. They're gonna plat another lot south of that one, and that will tie into the existing infrastructure.
Okay. So, like the dental clinic that's being built, and that area, when that's developed, is that flowing down to this sewer line also?
No,
That's gonna go a different route,
yes.
Probably
Okay.
across to the creek on the school.
go down by Adco and down that way?
I think that trunk line is that right, Steve?
Yes, the dentist office and that's being built out there. That actually runs to the northwest, ties into Harley and them, that runs down then on the west side of Stallion Creek.
It goes up that way and then down.
Yeah, so it
Okay.
goes to the northwest first, crosses the creek, and then it heads south,
Okay,
down towards Dakota Street, Court.
okay. Well, I just was thinking about if that stuff is tying into here also, that's putting even more pressure on along with this development.
With this being towards the top of the hill, it's really, this is the last bit of it.
Okay.
also, what step we looking to make to see,
Well, it's preliminary, so.
Yeah.
will we have to approve or kick it back, even though it is a preliminary?
I guess all the issues that we've raised tonight will be addressed.
Oh, for sure.
You assure me of that,
I
right?
assure you of that, yeah.
Well, you do have another time to turn it down if he doesn't.
We've been there before, as long as I say.
Yeah. But I'm gonna guess that you can't really alter the street too much, because if you alter the street width, you're really gonna cause a problem with your lots then.
You could alter the street width, you'll just have less green space between the curb and the sidewalk. I mean, you have a little more snow storage now.
Well, does it create a problem if you do that for your runoff?
It add a little bit more runoff because you're having more pavement.
So,
I think, I think as a council and P and Z, when it comes time to figure out street parking per the suggestion of the plat, we need to be for sure following that suggestion, because there are bottlenecks in very new subdivisions in town here that I'm familiar with, that Rod's familiar with, that you can't get an emergency vehicle bigger than a squad car through without, and you can't get snowplows without taking the corner. So I think we just need to be aware that we need to be following through at our end, that when we approve the final plat, that we also talk about, and this is where the signs for parking or no parking would go, so that we don't have that issue, because if these houses up there and someone has a fire and can't get to it, you've got houses closer together now too, because of the lot size, so we could have more than one fire going.
Well, and the other portion of this is, it is a cul-de-sac, so it's a dead end. Unlike, oh, I can go out and go to the right instead of going to the left. Depending on what portion of this you're at, you could be trapped.
I'll move to approve the preliminary plat so that we can keep moving.
Second,
Motion by Todd, second by Kay. Council, is there any more discussion? Is there any public comment on this? Penny, will you conduct a roll vote, please?
Buchan,
Yes.
Weimer,
Yes.
Crump,
Yes.
Yes.
Dan Smith,
Yes.
Katie Smith,
yes.
Motion to approve carried. Brian, thank you for being in attendance this evening.
Thank you.
Melissa, thank you for representing H&R Green. 7.4, review and approve consent agenda pay requests totaling $133,691.02. I will read the agenda items. Council can make a motion that includes consent, which would bring all up for a vote of approval, or they can make a motion on any of the items. Item A, from Snyder and Associates in the amount of $1,318.50 for the Second Street Lift Station project. Item B, from Peak Construction in the amount of $128,122.77 for Phase 2 Downtown Revitalization Project. Item C, from Origin Design in the amount of $688.75 for Stalin Creek Watery Improvement Project. Item D, from HR Green in the amount of $1,350 for Civil Plan Review Northland Subdivision. Item E, from HR Green in the amount of $1,224 for the Dillon Military Bridge Project. Item F, from HR Green in the amount of $807 for Engineering Services Master Service Agreement. Item G, from HR Green in the amount of $180 for Water Department GIS Services.
Real quick before any motion or decisions made, I was advised earlier today by Derek that the pay request for Peak Construction in the amount of $128,122.77 should not be paid. They have not submitted the documentation to ECOG that ECOG had requested. So just keep that in consideration. That would take the total pay request down to $5,568.25.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of paying Peak Construction.
Second.
Motion by Rich, second by Brooke. Council discussion? Public comment? Benny?
Dan Smith.
Yeah.
Kay Smith,
Yes.
Buchan,
Yes.
Weimer,
Yes.
Crump,
Yes.
Yes.
Motion to approve carried. 8.0 city administrators report.
The only thing I have, Aaron, can I yield my time to you? We had a recent comprehensive plan. Let's go through. I got the results back from the library from Aaron for that, and I think it was overly positive. I don't know if you want to just maybe a couple minutes, if you would.
Yeah. So you guys will hear about this again. I'll bring this to you guys in a more structured way. But basically what's happening is we're doing our strategic planning. So every 3 years we go through and we kind of look at, okay, what have we accomplished? What were our goals? Did we achieve them? Did we not? And then we get community members and different people from the community. They're called stakeholders, typically people who are either involved, who are in different areas, or have a stake for some reason in the community. And so they went through and they had 2 phases. The first phase was calling them and just asking them about the community. The last question was kind of library based, but for the most part, it was really community based. What do you like about your community? What do you not like about your community? What are some things you'd like to see change? And then the second portion was on July 1st. And so that was an in-person meeting. And that was, okay, so we kind of found out the general like topics and we kind of have responses from those. So what are some key things that we're seeing or common things that we're seeing? And then we'll go from there and kind of come up with some goals. And so basically what we found was people really like Anamosa. They think it's a really lovely place to be. They think it's a really kind place and that people are welcoming and they really enjoy it. Some of the areas that they would like to see fixed are things that we're already kind of working on. For example, like changes in like Parks and Rec, which Kale's working on. So that's all positive stuff there. The biggest issue they found was communication. And I know that's something within the departments we've all talked about as the best ways to talk about, well, what's happening in our town and let's see if we can get people there. So I was really happy that the negative things that I heard were things that we're already addressing, which means we already know what the problem is. So that's a positive thing. And for the most part, yeah, it was overall positive. So I was really happy to see that happen. And you'll hear some more information about it later on. So yeah.
Thanks. Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, that's fine.
It just kind of ties in. So again, I know Kale with the Parks and Recs there, they're working with the park board to kind of coordinate some strategic planning and whatnot. ECOG has reached out to me recently, said they're ready to get going on the city's comprehensive plan. So we're just kind of, within the office trying to coordinate all these and make them work together so we can facilitate that overall. So.
Council, any questions, comments for Jeremiah?
I don't know if this is the right time. What have we heard with regard to our little bridge project? And have we gotten the reports back yet on?
We have not gotten the reports back yet. We thought we would have them before or by the time of this meeting. Have not got them back yet. The only thing we got was a informal preliminary report that did confirm to keep the bridge closed due to some safety aspects that were confirmed. So the bridge is still closed, and we're awaiting that final report.
Thank you.
9.0 mayor and council reports. 9.1 mayor's report. I do not have a report. 9.2 council reports. Ten point zero, public comment for items not on the agenda. Now is if there's anyone here in the public that would like to address the council at this time, you can come to the podium, state your name, your resident of address, and the council will hear from you. 11.0 adjournment. This evening's meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for coming out.